Hello, lovely lot. We are going to take a journey into the mind of the amateurs. So welcome to the amateur's mind. We haven't done a video of this sort for a long time, and to celebrate this beautiful occasion, I color matched my headset with my jumper. But on a more serious note, we're going to talk today about, although I already can see that this is going to be a rather messy video, but the overarching concept I wanted to talk to you about was assessment. How do we assess positions, and very often how do we end up misassessing positions in a very spectacular fashion, and how can we actually fix this? So why is that a lot of the times we misevaluate certain situations? I find a lot of the times myself in my own playing practice that there are, a number of times when I play a game where my opponent and I calculate the exact same lines, and the only difference is that when we get to the end of the line we actually come to a very different evaluation. So I would like to ask you to join me now, and we are going to analyze a few positions, and they are very wildly chosen. So it was a random assortment of various kinds, but work with me and hopefully it is going to make a little sense to you. So, set position, black to move. My student goes rook after castles, rook d8. And obviously rook d8 is a very good looking move in this position. Puts the rook on the same file with the queen, prepares for e5. I would like to note the word he prepare, and just in general it's looking like a good developing move, and so student plays rook d8. Now, one of the biggest problems with lower level chess, and one of the greatest mysteries of the amateur mind, mysteries to me that is, it's a flow really what we're talking about, is the desire to prepare things. This is as a coach I usually go absolute bonkers over this, because 95% of the times when my students come to me with a move and present it as a good idea because it prepares X, Y or Z, my first question always is that wasn't ready to go, and almost exclusively we figure out that the preparing move was a total waste of space, and in fact we should have played what we were preparing for. Case in point, rook d8 prepares the one and only e5, which is totally ready to go and good to go. Now when I confronted my student with why are we not playing here e5, he told me that he didn't like d5. Now, first and foremost, I would like to stress this, that you can't assess a position on an initial feeling, which is that it kicks my knight out and it's a passed pawn. This is an assessment of an incredibly superfluous level where we just like, yeah, nah, I can't be bothered looking into it. And I can guarantee you that an awful lot of players under 1900 would totally misevaluate this. For the record, student is solid 2050, more realistically 2100, and not only did he misevaluate this, but equally importantly, he just didn't want to take the bother to actually look into this to see what was going where. But to be fair, even when we discussed this during a coaching session, there was a need to elaborate on why e5 is good and why d5 doesn't give white a very decent position. And so the way I like to approach it is that let's have a look in the resulting position and see the pluses and minuses, because here the student was like, oh, it's a passed pawn. For a somewhat more seasoned player who looks at the position as a whole, this doesn't stand out as a passed pawn. What this stands out as part of these two pawns that used to be at least to some degree connected and supporting one another, and now they are completely disjointed. Not only that, but as a result of being disjointed, they offer a wide range of weak squares that black can feast on. So now these pawns are totally blockaded and they can go nowhere. As a result of that, the value of the e4 bishop has gone down significantly, because this diagonal is completely and fully out of the picture, and to be perfectly honest with ourselves, it does absolutely nothing on this diagonal either. And in fact, black here has an f5 kick the bishop out plan, thus taking over the center fully. So now we are getting the whole of the picture a little bit on a deeper level. So if we took the bother to look into this just a few more moves to see who is going where, we would have come to a line something like knight d2, queen d6. And by now it's crystal clear. Oh, and by, in strong contrast, so e5, d5 has meant that this bishop devaluated incredibly. And on the same note, this bishop and its value has gone up just as much as this has gone down. So right now we are looking at a very well placed bishop, whereas it's a waste of piece, because it does absolutely nothing that way. And after e5, d5, the roles have swapped 180, full turn around, total waste of space, beautiful bishop, not only attacking the vital f2, but also covering c5, so white doesn't have the faintest hopes of joining these pawns again. And note that even if they do play c4, although now the pawns are guarding each other, but they are rigid. That means they can't go anywhere, and black is safely controlling all these squares. And this leads to my final point, one of the main things that up to 2200 I would say people overlook on a regular basis when evaluating position, and it's such an important and really vital concept of evaluating seemingly equal, especially in terms of material, which it is the case now, materially equal positions, is that who has got an apparent and obvious plan and what that plan is. And here, after knight a5, I can name 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, potentially 6 if allowed moves for black that I can play that very clearly improves the quality of my position, adds an extra oomph to it, each and every single one of them. I have a plan. I want to blockade the pawn. I want to get these rolling. I have got incomplete development that I want to finish. All these are no-brainer moves that are clear to see that we do have. What does white have? And to enhance my point, I'll turn the board around. Imagine you are white. Let's find a plan. Yeah, I'm gonna play knight d2, right? They play something, I'm going to need to connect my rocks. Yep. What on earth is white's plan here? There isn't one. The structure is so dead and stale that there is just a simple plan isn't available for white. All it is counterpunching and waiting for a mistake on black side. And unless it comes, we are going to lose this game without firing a shot. And this largely came down to the fact that after e5, d5, the structure has changed in a way that made a vast majority of my pieces useless, partly because of the pawn structure that can no longer be fixed. Note how, pawn mobility wise, black has got a very mobile central formation in the center, and my pawns are utterly and hopelessly rigid. This is a very commonly overlooked and undervalued concept, that pawns don't enjoy freedom. And if they are stuck on a certain color complex, which is white, that renders this white squared bishop utterly useless, and it renders this bishop to be a total boss dominating the dark squares, but also this one, which will be a very easy game-winning piece in an endgame when I just need to munch on these pawns. So if we actually had taken the bother to look a little bit deeper into this, we would have realized that by doing this, white would have landed in an utterly ugly and really planless position. And I would like to emphasize the planless an awful lot, because this is something that we don't really take into consideration and understand well. So this is a concept that I come across more and more frequently now in my coaching praxis, that people tend to, chess players, evaluate positions on a diagnostic level, in fact, instead of an analytical level. So diagnostic means, yeah, I have to move the knight, I don't like it. You are basically assessing what's in front of you right now, and even out of that rather large picture, we take one tiny component out, one that it's a pass pawn, and that too that it's a knight that now has to go. Alright? So that's, to me, is a little bit like we are trying to judge the beauty of you know, a painting by, you know, checking how much black was used in the overall painting. Like, it just doesn't work that way. You need to dig deeper. What's going on in the position, which is a living, evolving complex. You can't judge it based on, the knight is hanging on c6. Because that is almost as silly, and I like to bring this example up to ridicule this idea, to reveal, or rather to direct thinking to the right way. It's a bit like saying that black is a queen up. That's how I assess this position. And technically I'm totally correct, right? Black is, look at it, I've got an extra queen. Yeah, but it will be recaptured. Yeah, but right now it's an extra queen. Same way, you can't assess this, that, oh, this is a passed pawn and this knight is hanging. That's just what's right now, but we are going to make moves. We need to think forward and think, where can we take this position from here for either side? And the very sad realization is that white can take it nowhere other than to the garbage bin, because that's where it belongs. Because this position has become really, really difficult to play. No plan, weaknesses all over the shop, and a very easy and fluid play for black. And so we missed out on this opportunity. That being said, rook d8 obviously doesn't ruin everything. But now after knight e2, e5, d5, we enter the exact same position where we chucked in a totally meaningless rook d8, which we desperately needed here to support f5. And white played a super useful knight d2. That was their plan anyway. And if I can trust the computer's evaluation, we are not really better here anymore as black, which I still find it difficult to believe, because there is no way I wouldn't choose black any day of the week here. But that's already a testament to the fact that A, don't prepare what's good to go, and 2, very important, try to avoid assessing positions by just diagnosing, recognizing what's on the board. Because that's really a given. So you are a chess player who thinks forward, so your job is to visualize and imagine what's going to happen here in the next few moves. And that way, because of you have got a proactive type of approach to evaluating positions, you are far more likely to evaluate it at its face value, which is it's a weakening move. That does create a passed pawn, but that's almost a coincidental. This is not going anywhere. It's a weakness. It's not a passed pawn, as are the squares around it. A very interesting way for me to discuss this, and I really like to talk about it, because this is a part of the amateur's mind that tends to malfunction the largest amount of times, in my opinion. On that note, actually, I would like to continue with something a little bit less related, but still typical thinking deficiencies. So here, white has had the upper hand throughout the whole entire opening. And black managed to dodge a few bullets here and there, trade off a large number of pieces. And so now, it looks like our advantage is slowly but surely disappearing. Now, it's very important to stop that trend and to try to find something to fight for. Now, in this position, student plays rook e1, which is a pretty decent move. So I don't really want to criticize it, but it's the first move where we seem to lose the thread. Because now we look at the position and we realize that the black pieces are rather awkwardly placed in an undeveloped fashion, and so that's the time when you initiate some sort of fight or change. On paper, rook e1 is a perfect move. It completes development, brings the rook on the same file with the king. What could be wrong with it? What could be wrong with it is that we are playing an endgame, emphasis, and you can't ever afford playing a single move in an endgame which is not part of a plan. I like to stress this a lot, and people think I'm crazy when I say this, but the more you think about it, the more you will agree with me that in one way, shape or form, endgames are actually one of the easiest facets of the game, because what you need to find in an endgame is a plan and then the moves that lead there. And the reason why you can't do this in openings or middle games is because the insane amount of variations and tactics that try to cross your path make it impossible most of the times, unless it's a very, very positional and stale and rigid position, or where there is a clear target, to think like that. But in an endgame, you usually do two things. Either you have a target, you pile up on it, or if you don't have one, you try to create one and then pile up on it. And that is to say, if we are talking about an even-ish endgame scenario like this. So here, we are safe to say that rook e1 is part of no plan. And yes, again, I know it's developing and it's all fine and dandy, but what is our plan? Because developing ain't gonna cut it anymore. So we go like, well, we shouldn't need to open up the files for the rooks because our opponent is still undeveloped, and so if I manage to do that, then I have a realistic chance to cause harm. Thus d5. And if they take, you take back with the rook, and now rook e1 or d1, depending on how they respond, is going to be your plan. And all of a sudden, we have got a fairly big initiative happening in the position right away. But again, this has to be in the correct order. Yes, after d5, ed, rook d5, my number one plan is rook e1. You can't play rook e1 first, because now your plan d5 can't happen. And this is why I'm telling you that endgames, in a very funny and crooked way, are brutally caveman and simple. What do we want to do? We want to play d5 open files. Which files do we want to open? de. So now we have two choices, rook e1 or d5. First of all, I would already say, hang on, did you say your plan was d5? Yeah. So why don't you play d5 then? That's simple. You don't need to prepare it. That was your plan. You said it. You didn't play it. Doesn't make sense. And besides, if after rook e1 you tell me your plan is d5, but we don't have a response to c6, then it feels like we just slapped ourselves in the face. So this is where it started derailing. Now for the record, after d5 we have to reckon with e5. But again, that's a giant weakness on the f file. And I can utilize that by regrouping, or I can actually bring the rook here and play f3. And look at the backward pawn. If the backward pawn moves forward, then we can use this little trickery to again exploit the rook. So this is how the plan and the execution match together. You have a plan of playing f3 and you check if black's best is not refuting it. And now it looks like we are going somewhere. And after the best seems to be rook f8, f3, f5, d6 takes, it seems to me that we have at least achieved that there is an isolated pawn. Now once there is an isolated pawn on the board, again, that means target, that means we can play against something that is, again, a very simplistic endgame procedure. You pile up, you blockade the isolated pawn, eventually you try to win it. On top of that, we have this very cool check, by the way, that forces king back knight e3, and I would say that white is almost winning by force here. So weakness is scattered all over the board, utterly passive pieces. It just looks ugly as sin. So, student misses this, fine, no worries. I mean, I'm not exactly excited about it. Also know the time spent on the move, none, in a 15-15. Instantaneous move. And since we are talking about an endgame, if it was full board, almost inevitably this would be the best move. But because of this is an endgame, and it's a very narrow margin that we are operating with, whether it's going to be dead draw, or we can actually find something to play for, that was our chance. Now, work with me because it is going to get even more exciting. After knight f6, we have a chance again to trade or not trade. And in this particular case, although I do tell my students that 4 rook endgames are to be avoided like plague when you are ahead, because they tend to have an extreme drawish tendency, but very clearly, our only chance to generate play in this position is to trade d5 again, utilizing the firepower of our rooks, and again trying to disconnect pawns, and already this pawn structure looks like something that we might have an idea of targeting. In my opinion, the most realistic game plan here would look like rook d8, takes, king takes. Now I can already penetrate, and hands down definitely a far better position, or I can give a check to force the king to one side or the other, because if it goes this way, then there is a good chance that when I penetrate I will actually find something to shoot at. whether it be this pawn or this pawn, but the king will be quite far away. If the king comes this way, then that gives rise to this plan, easy, or I can penetrate and again start tickling the pawns. And whilst this position is definitely not winning in my opinion for white, it's very hard to imagine that this is winnable, this is how we can have a shot at it. Instead, student opts for the well, no, this is not logical at all. So what we are getting hooked on for some reason is that right now we assess this as a weakness, which is again a very iffy evaluation because this pawn can very easily back up. Right? So that per se is not a weakness at all, and it's extremely difficult to attack. So here student totally loses sight of what is important in the position and which way should we target. So here he misses the opening up of the position for the two rooks, definitely leading to slight edge, and instead picks a target which in fact isn't a target. It would be a weakness if there were no pawns here and here. As is, it's the most unlikely thing to ever hurt. Black plays c6, great move, preparing to bring the rook back. And white carries on with his logical plan, and the best part of it is that it comes to fruition from what he believes, because here black plays h5 and student goes, yeah, I got the g5 square, awesome. And that's how student, I'm guessing, didn't talk about this game, but I'm pretty sure that we went like, yay, awesome square for my knight. And this is where, again, the evaluation is fundamentally back to front and flawed. So let's talk about why this is really missing almost all major points. First and foremost, do we have a weakness? Anything to target? Zilch. If anything, we made the black pawn structure stronger because back here, at least this wasn't guarded by a pawn. And in the line that we looked at, we actually, yes, we managed to keep them, at least for the time being, separated from the rest of the pack. And by penetrating, we actually discouraged the connection of the pawn chain because that's an irreparable weakness. So here black has to tread carefully. Once again, I would like to stress, I don't think it's winnable. But here, when we achieved supposedly an ultimate position for the knight and whatever, the black pawn chain is more compact and better defended than ever. Let's have a look at our supposedly well placed knight. First of all, said knight is not sitting on an outpost, which means that it still can technically be kicked out with a pawn move. So that already puts us at an awkward, kind of ill at ease situation, because we can never assume that that's going to stay there forever. But quite frankly, I have no reason why we would want it to stay there forever, because it doesn't target anything that is a weakness. And last but not least, we can't even find a very long-term plan where this knight's position is justified. As a matter of fact, for a somewhat higher rated player, it's crystal clear that this knight on g5 is utterly misplaced, and I couldn't wait to bring the heck back from there to actually do something meaningful with that knight, even if it meant trading it off. It's totally misplaced, can't be part of any plan, and it's not attacking anything that puts substantial pressure on black. You can't claim that it's attacking that, but my king that is already ideally placed in the center is covering it, no worries. And this is how quickly we went from clearly better to clearly worse. Now, out of curiosity, let's see how the game developed. c5 was a mistake here. Rook d7. Keep on building. And after rook d1, I analyzed this position a little bit, and there is a really fascinating plan which I find it a little bit hard to believe that it's a functional plan. In my opinion, black's best bet here is to start slowly building up. Maybe bring the rook up, try to target this one. The engine found this move knight d5, and it took me a while to understand what it wanted to do, but I love the concept. I just think it's a little bit too slow. It threatens with knight f4. So something like g3 is forced, which again, by the way, justifies this perfectly well, because now white is the one having a backward pawn. And then knight c7. And boy, I love this. The plan, believe it or not, is to play knight e8, then knight d6, and then come to f5, hitting this pawn again. Fabulous, absolutely fabulous plan. I really do love it. And also I can come from this way, so actually knight b5 is threatened, because if c3, then c5 is going to end in a isolated pawn on d4. So I actually need to dodge knight b5, which means that the knight gets rerouted this way. Quite amazing stuff. And then knight d6, knight f5 is incoming. If I drop back to e4, finally dispatching this bad knight, then probably there is nothing better for black here than knight d6. But again, the position has changed in a way, well, thank God white can finally get rid of with the knight, where it's only black who can be better, but I like rook d5 again far more. Not clarifying the situation and hinting threats like this. But all in all, it's very clear that from this position on, the only person to play for a win can only be black. For the record, according to stock, which is -1. It's a substantial advantage. Out of curiosity, I would like to see how this game ended. No, this is the analysis. So it went rook d8, c5, c4. Okay, that's an interesting concept. I like it. Now we have got an outpost on d5. Very important compared to that knight. Rook d5, okay. b5 looked logical to me here. Yeah, okay, all good. Rook f5, knight d5, keep on building. Okay. Knight, I don't know, man. Okay, let's kick the rook out, that's fine. And white lost on time. Slightly worse position. Rook up again. Knight can come in. White is utterly planless. Note how the knight hasn't moved since we put it on g5 and didn't fulfill a single job. Not one. The only way how we could justify the existence of this knight was to get the heck back as soon as we could. There you go. That was another very interesting misassessment and misplanning the position. So here we didn't realize that we needed to go for a very quick and effective plan, and instead we picked a target that was never going to be a target. Like, I just can't fathom how we figured that this would be a good plan. Which virtually, I would like to emphasize this, that right here, after executing our plan, we managed to misplace 2 out of our 3 pieces utterly. In a way where the best plan for us was to undo both. Whilst we actually improved the opponent's pawn structure. It's a very hurtful thing to say for most, and I know that I will be stoned to death in a cyber way for this. But below 1800, I tend to say to my students that more often than not, they beat themselves before the opponent could beat them. So here, if we've said to black, try to win this dude, he would go, I'd be like, how? And then we are like, well, let me pave the way for you. And we give them a rock solid head start to actually beating us. And we are talking about 2100 level here. And that's still a mini version of that phenomenon. Now, on that note, I would like to show you an even higher level misunderstanding, and this is going to come from one of my games. And I really like this example because it is, again, such a beautiful example for using all the wrong tools and methods to assess a position. I have won this game over the board. At the time of play, both players are just shy of 2300. FIDE. Both white and black. I'm playing against a Vietnamese female player here. And I had this position and this very same endgame time countless times online. Countless times. So we are entering one of the biggest main lines of the Richter-Rauser, commonly and very slack way referred to as the classical Sicilian. And here after b5, the theoretical main line is bishop takes f6, which stems from the concept that black must ruin his own pawn structure, although ruin is not a good word because this is a very sturdy pawn structure by taking with the G, because queen takes f6 gets met very strongly by e5 takes and then knight b5, creating a mate threat and the checkerino down here. And so bishop takes f6, g takes f6 is the main theoretical variation here, and this is really where all theory begins. Now instead my opponent here opted for what appeared to be exploiting my blunder and went into this forcing line of take. And I don't want to play it out, I want you to work with me because this is how we misevaluate stuff. She went into take e5, takes queen takes queen, rook takes queen, king takes back, f takes e5 back, winning the knight on f6, or at least causing a lot of trouble. Now I don't know if you could follow that calculation or not. I'm going to play it out on the board. It looks like this. And it's difficult. I will give it to all of those who fall for it. It's difficult to assess this when you have to see it here. It's white to move here and the decision is to be made now. And so when they enter it, they have to see that position I just showed you then from here. It's hard to visualize. And it's very easy to fall for this temptation to think that white is better here. The truth, on the other hand, is that white is already looking at a potentially hopeless position here. One that probably is beyond salvation. Because not only are we not winning a piece here at all because of h6, but in the resulting position, no matter what white plays here, black's endgame is just going to be absolutely beautiful. Let's go one by one. The worst is probably take this. After h takes, pawn takes, bishop takes, I have got the two most impressive bishops of my chess life. And note that the knight has absolutely nowhere to go. And even if I didn't have the pawns, note this bishop-knight correlation, that the bishop cuts out all the important knight squares. Top of that, this bishop can't move because of the loss of two pawns. So can't move, can't move, can't move. White has got three pieces that can't move. And in fact, they only have three pieces. This is an utterly, hopelessly lost endgame. There's no coming back from here. When you have got three pieces and they can't move, you know that you are done. So somewhat better, but still dead category is take with the bishop, and thus landing in a, oh, I'm a pawn up. Except again, after rook g8, can't move, can't move, can't move. Same old, same old. Plus, the f6 pawn is very easy to see that it's totally dead weight because I would just round it up like so. No chance whatsoever. Yes, black can dream about biting into these two pawns. Sorry, white can dream about biting into these two pawns. But the reality is that this is all it took. If I drop back now to a2, I just play a5, the pawn chain is protected. In fact, a4 has been weakened. Plus the knight is even worse than ever before. Last but not least, after bishop drop back somewhere semi-sensible. Bishop h4, g5 is even worse. Once again, taken now the double h pawns is actually a huge benefit because pawn h3 is now a game-winning threat on top of everything I said already. So the game continued, bishop back to e3, and now the evaluation of the position correctly is that this bishop rules it all. What is very easy to overlook is the immense power of this bishop, which means that it causes a dead knight, and the bishop can't develop because the pawn is hanging behind. And so what that means is that I have all the time in the world to pick off round up and pick off this pawn on e5. Opponent played bishop d4, trying to put up a good defense. And actually I didn't play the most accurate endgame here. Apparently bishop c5 is best. I find my g5 far more logical. I want to pile up on this pawn and win it. a4, again the only logical plan. b4 back, same story. Bishop b5 finally gets to develop. And now I need to be a little bit careful because if I take there after rook d1, white has obtained some counterplay. Remember this, your greatest enemy in a winning position is called counterplay. That's the dreaded C word in chess when you have a winning position. The one and only thing you don't want to give your opponent is counterplay. So I go nay. I take. Now this is again a typical move that a lot of amateurs would be extremely reluctant to play because of this is a pass pawn here. And so what? A pass pawn is an asset if it poses danger. It doesn't pose any danger. Even if I strip the board from these pieces, push, I can still catch it with my king and eliminate it. And I have 3 pieces. This is not a threat, it's a weakness. And there is no way that it can be both. It's either one or the other. And this is what I'm telling you, how lower rated players tend to assess this very same thing, polar opposite to how it really is. This is not a threat. It's a potential weakness. Full stop. Game continues. Bishop g7, an inaccuracy on my end. Again, bishop c5 was the correct way to get rid of it, the bishop, which is the defender of this pawn. And after takes, followed by king e7, I can cherry pick which one I'm going to win first. I played bishop g7, which is a tad inaccurate. Rook e1 was played, king e7 was played. So now I just want to come and round up this guy here. She played c4, falling apart under the pressure, logically trying to protect the pawns. But all it is that now c4 is going to become utterly and hopelessly weak. There's no way to come back from here. c4 is dropping. She played c5, takes, and then king d2, trying to make me block my own c file. Rook d8, king back. Now I'm piling up on the e pawn. And when she exposes the king a little bit too far, I then cash in on it. f5 was even better, but essentially same concept. Takes, and now there is no going back. They have to take, because if they go back, I would check the bishop down. And this endgame is just beyond repair. Bishop takes c3, connecting the 2 pawns is the imminent threat. And she collapsed here and allowed me to march on in and get a queen. And this all stemmed from 2 things. A, she didn't know her opening repertoire, because this is hardcore theory. So there is not really an excuse on 2300 level for not knowing this variation. But 2, that she totally misevaluated at this point the real value of this position. And once again, this is next level stuff. So if I ask you how we would evaluate in this position, you have to calculate the consequences of take, e5, take. A lot of people would fall short. And it's understandable. But still the point remains the same, that you can't just assess it that, oh, it's pinned. Yeah, it's pinned. Thank you for telling me. No kidding, Sherlock. And your position is rubbish because you can't move the rest of your army and you're not going to win this knight for free. That's how it is. And on this note, I'm going to bring up our last example, which I just wanted to talk about because we are going to observe here a phenomenon that I see so much in my own students' practice that I just wanted to put it out there so that you guys can have a look at it. So we are talking about white playing this game as my student, landing in this position, which is already bordering the total winning, because black has no attack whatsoever going on the queen side, and f5 is about to rip the center and the king side apart. Perfect play by white, by the way. As far as coming to here is concerned, f5 is played, knight takes, queen takes back, perfect chess. The advantage keeps on growing. Queen goes back to c7. Lord knows what this move was meant to be, because e6 is hanging. Bishop c8 only. Queen c7. We take. Now this took a fair bit of time for student. Not quite sure why. Because king is in the middle. You want to rip into it. e5 pawn. I would pay money here for black to take this, because that means they open up the e5 for me. Thank you. And I would also pay money for taking here, because that does the same stupid mistake. Only chance for them to survive is castle, and even here they are totally dead. But at least now the king is relatively safe. Instead, Doozy goes takes on e6, 2150 for the record, in 1515 classical. Knight takes e6, queen e5, and students plays rook h1, he1. Beautiful chess. Now I would like to stress that at this point in a 15-15, student is down to 4 minutes, whereas the opponent 16. So the opponent has more time on his clock than what he started with. And as a reward for that, he's utterly dead lost. I would like to stress, for the sake of delivering my points about this position, that according to the engine's evaluation, it's +9. Which means that if I translate it to material, white is a queen up. Yep, you heard that right. Plays king d7, trying to get the heck out of the d file, and his student fails to find bishop g5, which instantly wins the game, because after something like queen d6, I can just drop the bishop back and knight c7 and then pick up d5, opening up everything. Oh boy. According to the engine, the best move here is g6. And the other thing that student didn't see, that if the queen goes anywhere, I can add a little bit of extra spice by building this up. And like, it even feels stupid to talk about this position and analyze it, but believe it or not, we managed to botch it. And the way to botching it is so typical, it's textbook. I could have shown you hundreds of examples just from my own students' practice. We go bishop c5, which is still totally okay, although this allows queen f6, which in turn disallows queen f5. And now, student really wants to win by taking this and then checking something down. Because this is our only means, unfortunately, of winning, and realizes that after queen e7, we don't have a good knight jump. Panic kicks in. Oh my god, how do I win now? To be fair, after queen f5, the only move for black left is resignation. But unfortunately, student doesn't calculate that deeply, because desperately, madly focused on cashing in on this in terms of winning material. And let's face it, we have got a king stuck in the middle. So we have one and one target only, and that is the king. And as so typical in these cases, when the panic kicks in and when we go like, oh my god, I'm gonna botch it. Of course you are going to botch it. What does student do? Moves backwards. Now, I have got a ridiculously extreme reaction to going backwards in any given position where we are meant to attack. And I don't care that this maintains a totally winning position. This is the reason of our downfall. Not because of the relative value of the move, but because of what it does and what message it sends. It goes backwards in a position where we need to go forward like a madman. And two, because it sends a message of, I have no idea what to do with ya. Because bishop d4, the only plan of this move is to attack the queen. And when the queen moves, we will again sink back into, oh my god, what will I do now? Now the irony of the situation is, and this is always the way how chess works, and this is why people who are reluctant to sacrifice pieces, to play bold moves, will always end up losing a lot of these winning positions. It's because they will be extremely reluctant to even consider a move that puts yet another piece under attack, although technically it's not under attack, and instead of cashing in on the threat, adding another one. It's that simple. This move sends the message of, I want to murder your king. Funnily enough, that's the purpose of the game, not to win material. Right? It's that simple. And so if they go, I don't even know, let's for argument's sake, they go, there you go in, bang, 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 king back, check, check, checkmate. That's it. I know that I played a total lemon, but I wanted to model the concept. Not backwards, forward. With the idea of forward. If you are not going forward in a position like this, you are going to botch it. Especially if you are extremely prone to time troubles, like my student, because I've got a fair few who struggle with this. And here comes the next one, which is why I wanted to show you this whole entire shebang. Now queen trades is on, student is down to 130. Out of curiosity, because I'm really cruel, I checked every single queen move here that is legal, that doesn't put the queen on prey. So here, I didn't check these three. I shall do now. Yep. So now I have checked them all. I think queen g3 was the worst. After queen g3, we are only plus 4.3. So there is virtually no queen move on the board that would be bad for white. And in fact, queen h3, which looks the least likely, is one of the best with the idea of g5 exploiting this. But I really do like queen b3 too, with the idea of trying to tickle the king from this angle. And also after taking this, I can still finally destroy that king via rook takes d5. Watch what happens instead. Such a cliched, typical case of what's going on in the amateur's mind. Plays knight c5 check. Thus, dropping our advantage from plus 9.1 to 1.9. Essentially losing a queen is what this move is. But that's not what hurts me. What hurts me is the logic. We are totally winning. We know we are. Student knows he's totally winning. Can't find the wind to save his life. Eats all his time. And then goes like, I might as well trade as queens to be safe. To be safe in this position means you checkmate the hell out of your opponent. That's your only safety measure. Everything else is extremely unsafe. That's what safety means in this particular case. There is a point written next to your name. End of story. Everything else is extremely dangerous because you have got 1:30 on the clock versus 15 minutes. And now we go into queen trade. And what people don't understand, and I don't understand why they don't understand it, but I'm really passionate about this, as you can tell, is that this check forces a queen trade, which means that now we are on move 24, we are going to play another 40 moves. Guess what's going to happen if you have to play 40 moves and you have got a minute and a half? You figured, right? You're going to run out of time. So, and it all started with this. But I insist that even after bishop d4, if I just moved a semi-decent queen move, it's all over Red Rover because my next move is going to be either bishop here or bishop even here and bang. That's it. And I'm not even thinking. So right now I'm moving it at 1:30, expecting something, anything, bang, bishop c5. Now this is hanging. I don't even know what they do because if takes, then knight takes check, takes, queen takes his mate. Or wins queen at least. And if anything else happens, I'm just gone. That's it. And note again that I'm going forward. So although this is sideways with the intention of forward, forward, forward. If you don't do this, you are not safe. There is no safety in chess like, oh, okay, I will trade queens and then I will be okay. How would you be okay when you've got 50 seconds and the position is dead even? That's not safe. That's actually the definition of suicide when we have got a mating attack, no time at all, we have a forced win and we go like, let's trade queens, nothing bad can happen to me. Yeah, except you're going to lose a dead even endgame. Awesome. Now credit to opponent, to student, somehow managed to save the day and pull out a draw in this bishop ending without actually losing on time, because there was some increment added to the time. So the message I'm sending to you with this, forget this idea of safe. That one of the most misused, misunderstood concept of safe is safe in amateur's chess. It doesn't exist the way you think. If you are winning, your only safe position, route or journey or way to go is to finish it off ASAP. And what people tend to call safe is the exact opposite. I couldn't possibly find a move here that would take this game any longer and make this game longer than this. This is literally the move that guarantees that this game is going on for another 40 moves. That's not safety. That has got suicide written on it with capital letters. Safety is that I'm focusing on your king and I'm going to rip it apart like mad. This is safe because it's mate. That's it. I know that it's hard because you go like, oh, but what if it's, but there is no what if not. it has to be right because the king is stuck, your whole army is all over the black king, and they are dodging bullets left and right and center. It can't be wrong. I warmly welcome you to send me your first time when you lose a game, when you're attacking a king that is stuck in the middle in such fashion, constantly going forward, and it didn't work out. Because instead what I'm seeing by hundreds is that, oh, I wanted to be safe, and so we end up in a queen trade in a totally winning position. Even worse, what I see even more often than this, by the way, is that when we are slightly worse in an endgame scenario, and when we trade everything off the board, again, in the name of safety, and we land in a pawn ending with a pawn down. Which is like, you don't even have to have a brain to win it, because all you do is just up, 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 queen, you're dead. And as long as there are pieces on the board, we can realistically fight for a draw or tricks, even if we are shorter on time. But in the name of safety, we trade everything off, which means that we are now in the most simplistic endgames ever, dead lost, no time. Done in the name of safety. So, I will round this off now because I spent a fair bit of time on this, and like I expected, I went down on a fair number of avenues, but two main messages with this amateur's mind. Be very methodical with your positional assessment and take into consideration an extra layer. Try not to assess what's right in front of your nose, but where that position will go from there. And in terms of time troubles and safety, I don't like to use the word safety at all because 99 times out of 100 it gets misused and misunderstood. Don't go back, go forward, try to finish it ASAP. All of these are what you would normally do anyway in a winning position. When under time pressure, times 500, these are the things you want to go. Opposed to go back, trade queens. Two things that will guarantee that you will never ever win that particular game and more than likely will lose it. On that note, guys, that was probably a heavy content. So I will leave you with it now. And I will be back with some more soon. Thanks for watching. Bye.